One of the lamest political spectacles I can recall occurred this afternoon at the request of two left-wing Democrats from California. Anna Eshoo and Jerry McNierney of California, who we will now refer to as the leaders of the Ministry of Truth, recently wrote a letter to cable companies in the hopes of silencing Newsmax, Fox News, and OAN. They claim the Capitol Hill riot was caused by these networks broadcasting allegations of voter fraud in the 2020 election. Eshoo and McNierney, of course, would love nothing more than conservative news to disappear. They salivate thinking of a country where only their ideas are possible. They gaze at China with an envy so deep it hurts. Sadly for them, as left as this country is becoming, it appears we're not quite ready for full-blown censorship and state-run media. The most ironic part of today was the fact that the Ministry of Truth started their hearing with what now appears likely to be a lie, repeating again the now very questionable story of Officer Brian Sicknick's death.
This led directly to the horrific events of January 6th, the attack on our Capitol and our democracy by insurrectionists motivated by former President Trump. 5 lives were lost that day, and more have been lost since. A Capitol police officer was murdered.
Capitol police officer murdered. Last night, we reported Officer Sicknick's own mother says she believes her son died of a stroke. She said he was not hit in the head. Do you think the Democrats care about that? Of course not. Congressman Steve Scalise, who was shot and nearly killed by a left-wing gunman, picked apart calls for censorship about 5 minutes into the meeting.
A day that a gunman walked onto a baseball field and shot at over a dozen members of Congress, including myself. There's been a lot of investigation into it. The FBI did a report. The gunman was motivated by hypercharged rhetoric that he was hearing from the left, from high prominent elected officials, as well as media personalities. I don't blame those other people. I blame the shooter.
Common sense. Let it wash over you. Conservatives also pointed out the obvious. If we are canceling Newsmax and Fox, we need to cancel CNN and MSNBC for years of dangerous lies, alleging Donald Trump was a Russian agent. Years of lies. How many times did they talk about that story? Every day for 2 years? About the President of the United States. Talk about dangerous. So now, at this point, we're all canceled, right? Now we have no cable news. The newspapers would love that, and maybe that's why they've been so quiet. The New York Times, the Washington Post were once fierce defenders of the First Amendment. Not today. And now think about this. Can you imagine if this hearing was led by Republicans? Imagine if today started with a letter from Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes requesting cable companies cancel CNN and MSNBC over their allegations that Donald Trump was a Russian asset and all of that reporting. Imagine they wrote the letter right after the Mueller report came out. Can you imagine the outrage? It would be insanity in this country right now. But today, no outrage from the mainstream press. Nothing. In fact, if you Google today's hearing, and you should, you'll notice nobody even covered this thing. It's unbelievable. Evidently, the left no longer cares about freedom of speech and freedom of the press. They'll happily trade that for an unbreakable leftist society where conservative thought is suppressed and destroyed. Fair-minded journalists no longer run these mainstream media institutions. Left-wing activists are running the show now. This is all part of the plan. They've put these people in these places. It's working really well. Whatever journalists are left are afraid of them. We've seen that at the New York Times. The people that have worked there for decades have no idea what's happening to that newspaper. It's really scary. As far as freedom of speech, Georgetown law professor Jonathan Turley put it best today.
Those seeking limits often speak of free speech like it's a swimming pool that must be monitored and carefully controlled for purity and safety. I view it more as a rolling ocean. It is indeed dangerous, but it's also majestic and inspiring. Its immense size allows for a natural balance. Free speech allows false ideas to be challenged in the open rather than driving dissenting viewpoints beneath the surface.
There was a lot of great speeches like that today. The cure for bad speech is more speech, not less speech. We shouldn't be canceling anything. We should be putting more out there. That's why this country works. Common sense, again, prevails. Republican Kathy McMorris Rodgers, the committee's ranking member, delivered one of the best blows against the Ministry of Truth. Take a listen.
Elected officials using their platform to pressure private companies to censor media outlets they disagree with? That sounds like actions from the Chinese Communist Party, not duly elected representatives of the United States Congress.
It's very true. Very well put. And to Democrats Anna Eshoo and Jerry McNerney,